the question I want to go around with for the room is, can you tell us of a time where you felt most free? So I'll give you a moment to think about that. I'll quickly make a plate, but yeah, it could be any time where you felt particularly free, like you felt an experience. And it could, you could interpret that many ways. It could be a spiritual freedom. It could be, it could be a political freedom. It could be any kind of time, a moment, spiritual or otherwise, spiritually, physically, you felt yourself tap into what it means to be free. Hi. Good luck. Carol, nice to meet you. Welcome. Make a plate. There's food for
Yeah.
So we'll take just a second and then I'll call on people to answer, to share.
Yeah.
Good. Something to eat it. Leave them alone. We mother.
When Lisa comes back out, we'll take a moment to thank her.
And Sherry.
And Sherry, who were the volunteers today? Sherry and Ron. So thank you to Sherry and Ron. Thank
And
you guys.
Lisa when she gets
And
here.
Lisa, yeah. We'll
Yeah,
thank her again when she's out.
Then there was, we were in the periphery doing the prep for some weekends.
Some weekends thing.
Oh, I don't know what that's about. Well, thank you, early. Thank you.
volunteering tomorrow.
Okay. Go back and cut creative work.
Get it over.
Oh, no, I'm coming to the kitchen tomorrow morning.
Oh, nice, nice. Great, that sounds good. Okay, let's do a go around. Who wants to share a time when you felt free? Go for it, thanks.
Well, these days, I think I feel free all the time. Since I retired, well, that's been almost 12 years, but it's like the responsibility of having to get up at a certain time and having to be somewhere at a certain time. And as you know, being a parent and having to be responsible for your children. When your kids grow up and leave the house, you can feel a freedom from your responsibility. And yet it's there always, you know.
Okay, so the freedom that comes with retirement, that comes with an empty nest. We actually have a nest in our backyard and we actually see the birds, the baby birds hatch and go off. So there's something about, and free as a bird, almost, that empty nest feeling too. Thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Any other? There, go ahead, Nina, and then we'll go, yeah.
I would say anytime I'm in nature, when we're out hiking, walking, it's a release.
Not in the water.
In the water,
When you're kayaking.
in the kayak. Yeah. I'll tell you after today.
Thanks.
But definitely, I think when I'm unfettered, so not even in a kayak.
Okay, I love that. So nature, and we're gonna come back to that.
She's here.
And again, I love that that's your tradition.
This is right there.
Oh, Lisa, we wanted to thank you for a wonderful lunch as always. So thank you. Lisa. Ron, thank you. Thank you. So Fred, I'll get to Bob, well, Francis and Bob, but there are more copies here if you need. So nature, and I know you said that's your tradition on birthdays too, to spend the whole day and go out in nature. So good, keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. Francis.
About 120 miles south of London during my formative years. It's called Bournemouth. It was a seaside resort. Usually for elderly people, they came to inhale the pines and the trees. Anyway, my favorite thing in the world was to walk along the seafront, Shabbat, 3 miles, going to my synagogue with the English Channel pounding, the smell of the golden sands and the freedom. It was a wonderful thing. And I wish I could get that back. That's what my heart is.
Thank you for those beautiful descriptors too. Before we go to Bob, I just want to explore a little bit because we have two nature interests. What is it about nature that helps you feel free or experiencing the outdoor? So the calmness, yeah.
It blanks out everything else. You're so absorbed in it. First of all, very often just encompasses you.
Right. Yes.
I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I don't think of nature as being free. I think of nature as being closer to God.
Okay, closer to God. So how come? Say more.
I don't know, because it just seems like that's the only thing you can think about at that point.
Yeah,
Because everything just works the way it's supposed to.
right. Everything works the way it's supposed to. Yeah, so you see God manifest in nature.
It's not, hasn't totally been destroyed by man yet.
Right. Yeah, there's something about, I mean, it's interesting, you go to like these gorgeous churches and basilicas and you say, oh my God, and that inspires awe in the sense of like, look at what human beings, the art and the beauty, but you go out and anywhere in nature almost, and you can almost feel that same, just, oh my God, untouched by human hand, right?
Especially the desert.
Yeah, okay, good. So we're gonna bring that back too. So keep that, the desert and the idea of healthcare, of ownerlessness and freedom that comes with that. So let's go, Bob, yeah.
I was raised in a multi-generational house. And so consequently, I was very close to my grandparents. And our family tradition on Pesach, my grandpa always said, Lashana Haba be America.
As a way to appreciate the freedoms here in this country.
But I mean, you were.
And he said, next year.
You're gonna be
Okay.
Right. So instead of articulating that spiritual longing of returning to Jerusalem, returning to Israel, there's sort of this, I'm a Jew who is a proud diaspora Jew as well. Oh, that's an interesting thing. Yeah.
It was, well, they came to the United States in 1905.
Uh-huh.
So the Ukraine was not particularly friendly. He retired on Social Security.
Mm.
So there was an income and there was freedom to be Jewish, and all the American freedoms, and they were really happy to be here.
Are we okay? Right, good. So a good reminder of just the kind of appreciation for American freedoms that July 4th is meant to inspire. Nelson.
Well, for me, it's much more mundane. When I finally finished all my PhD work, my dissertation, everything was accepted. For the first time ever, it seemed to me that I had no assignments. I could do anything I wanted. I could read books my professors didn't want me to read. It was wonderful.
So was that liberating or was that terrifying?
No, it was liberating. It could have been terrifying, but it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And the first book I read that my
Retirement's
professors
terrifying.
didn't want me to read was by Wittgenstein.
Yeah. Well, actually, this is bringing up a great segue because some people, and I just heard a couple of people echo this sentiment that retirement is terrifying because, and going off what Nelson has said is when you have structure, when you have a routine, everything sort of makes sense, you know what you're doing. And there actually is a certain paradoxical freedom that comes with structure, right? If you have a container, then life can happen in that, but if there are no walls, if there's no boundaries, then you might be, instead of feeling free, you might feel paralyzed with, oh, what do I do now? I feel less free than I did when I had a structure.
Then you go to class on Thursday.
You go to class on Thursday, yeah.
But in retirement, my idea about it is you have to have a reason to get up in the morning. And I pretty much have within flexibility, I have things I do each day
Right.
and I love it. It's great.
But so even that though is a self-imposed structure and routine.
Right.
And you could say rules almost, right? Like it's even though they're freely taken upon yourself, you have filled a gap, a void with rules.
But I'm free to change them.
Yes, that's true too. That's true too. Yes.
So we have freedom of choice, freedom to do things. The people in the former Soviet Union had a freedom from choice. They didn't have to worry about a million things to choose from in the supermarket or anything else like that. But a lot of their choices were made from them, and they came to this country and they kind of wanted that freedom from choice.
Yeah, my dad jokes that free will is overrated. So I just tell me what to do. Troy, yes, go ahead, and then we'll work our way to you.
Your argument a moment ago was the same. Why alpha is such a wonderful thing. It gives us so much structure and in a way takes certain choices away that give us the freedom. But it almost seems contradictory or in opposition to that freedom we feel in nature.
Right.
Whereas I don't think we really, when we're in nature, we think no boundaries, no choices. So it's interesting that we can in a way be free in both of those roles.
Right, so that is where we're headed, and interesting that halakha provides structure that may at times feel binding, but at other times may feel liberating. And then how do you apply a Jewish practice to nature where there's a boundlessness, but can you sort of experience a deeper meaning or truth out in nature? And then I want to call on you, and do you want to give an opportunity to introduce yourselves in case?
My name is Cheryl Bellamy,
Uh,
and I'm here.
Near you.
My name is Cheryl Bellamy, and I was invited through these two friends of mine. And what else do you want?
No, that's great. We're just so happy to have you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
I was just thinking that nature, because it's constantly changing and also when you're thinking about climate change, it helps you to reinvent yourself.
Mm.
We are always in the area of our lives that we're retirement, you have to reinvent yourself. Or, if you're a kid that's, wants to know what my purpose is, you have to reinvent yourself. So it comes down to purpose as well, too.
Wow. So it's so interesting because I'm thinking of the counter to that, which would be Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Whereas you're saying, well, wait a minute, no, there is so much constantly new and renewing itself in nature that it actually inspires you and makes you realize that you're never set in one, there's the thing that every 7 years you have new cells in your body. So you're like a whole new person every 7 years, right? So maybe the seasons and the changes in nature help you remember that, remind you that you can change.
Right.
That change is always possible. You're never set in your ways. Go ahead, yeah.
I want to
And then
add
you-
something about what you said about liberating when you are in retirement. But if you choose right your job, you don't want to retire because you enjoy doing what you're meant to do.
Right.
So it's
Right,
not always correct.
right.
You know?
Again, it's tricky, right? So it's this it sounds like it could just be this wonderful thing, but sometimes you feel like, no, I miss work. I miss that job.
And by the same token, when you see some beautiful sunrise or sunset, or even just to see last a day ago, the stormy skies.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I find beauty in all those things, and it just is in all of the universe.
It's key. So I'm gonna do Jackie and then Sheila, just because I haven't heard Jackie yet, and then we're gonna dive into the text. I want to make sure we do that. Go ahead.
My life about 18, too young to work. And I had a best friend, and we used to go to the library and get an armload of books, each of us.
Oh, yeah.
And get a pitcher of lemonade and a blanket, and we would go up to Prospect Park where we lived very close by. We'd find a tree, spread out the blanket, and we would just read.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
That's beautiful. So in case people didn't hear, with a friend going to Prospect Park, a blanket, pitcher of lemonade, and a bucket full of books, and just read in the park under a tree. So there's the nature piece, but there's also text and how text can facilitate an experience of freedom. So we're going to get there too. Sheila, go ahead.
Say some what everybody's been saying, and I think you set me off with retirement, is that we have different periods of freedom. Yeah, I was free when I was retired, but now, as I'm getting older, it's a different kind of freedom.
Mhm.
My mother-in-law's favorite line about freedom was that she can say whatever, and she lived to 95, okay? I can say whatever I want.
I can I don't have to filter anymore.
Just one quick response to what you said, freedom to do things that people wouldn't necessarily accept. My sister likes to stay in bed sometimes till 11:30 in the morning. And it's like, why not? If that's what you want to do, you're free to do it.
Right.
I used to do that when I was young.
Oh.
So I want to dive in now. Our first text comes from last week in our Parsha, where the Israelites are looking back fondly, actually, at their time in Egypt. Which is surprising, sort of a rose-tinted glasses. Did anybody want to read? Go for it.
We remember the fish that we used to eat free in Egypt,
the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic.
So there are a few interesting things about this verse. Number one, just the fact that they're reminiscing about their time in bondage and servitude seems striking. And I think there's something to that about human nature, right? That it's sort of the devil, is better than the unfamiliar, the unknown, right? So the good old days. And you go back and it's sort of a revisionist history too, right? Like, because they don't like the manna, because they don't know where they're headed in the desert, oh my God, at least we knew when our meals were, and at least we knew what they were. So there is that sort of, I think, rewriting of what their actual experience was, looking back more fondly, feeling like, oh, that's when I was free, which is when they were in bondage, right? And now they are free, but they don't feel free. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, it shows that time has not changed the Jewish people talking about food. It's still very popular today.
That's
among
right.
Jewish people.
Yes.
And so maybe we inherited that tendency from our ancestors.
Yes. Well, but that's huge in that parsha, because remember, God, that they say, give us meat. God sends the quail, and it's a plague that erupts with them. But it's that craving, right? It's that, I don't want this manna, even though the commentators say that the manna from heaven tasted like anything that you wanted it to. It sort of had this magical property, and it's described as being like cakes and oil, and it's like it sounds delicious. But I think there's also variety that you miss in life, right? Like if you have, even if it had that magical property, I think. But the other thing is it's sort of described as an angelic thing, right? Eating the food of angels. And I think there's that very human sort of just, what about the leeks and the cucumbers and right? Like we're not ready to be these angels. Even if it means being slaves, we want this variety. Yes. Nina, do you have your hand up?
Why is the word free in here? We used to eat free in Egypt.
Thank you.
What?
That was the next thing. So great question. And that's what the commentators pick up on. So chinam, where have we heard chinam before?
Sinat.
Good. So sinat chinam, which is baseless hatred. And the rabbis say that that's why the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, was destroyed. Not because the Romans were so powerful, but because we did it to ourselves. And we see this today, right? There's so much fraction and divisiveness in our own Jewish community. And it leads to, it led to the destruction of the temple. So chinam in that context is baseless, but it's basically hate for free, right? Don't worry, I hate you. Don't have to do anything or give me anything. I hate you. It's free, right? And then some say that we should combat sinat chinam with ahavat chinam, right? Baseless love. But the commentators say, wait a minute, they're not accurate here. They didn't used to eat for free in Egypt. The cucumbers, the lemons, the leeks. The commentators say they didn't even get straw for free. Remember that the Egyptians said, we're not even going to give you that. You have to go out and collect the straw yourselves. To say that they didn't even get straw for free, there's no way that they got the food for free. But in this moment of desert wandering, of hunger, they are looking back more fondly and saying, that's when I was free. I was free then, I got this for free. Freedom was in Egypt.
I'm thinking that in the case of the fish anyway, that it's not that the Egyptians gave it to it, it's just it was so plentiful, you just go down to the river and take some.
That's what they say, that God would send a miracle, the fish would magically swim into the jugs of the women who were collecting water. And so that is also, but there's another commentary, which is next. It's a Midrash from Sifrei Bamidbar, but there is a hand. So Nelson, and then we're going to get to the next commentary.
Well, I was at the zoo once and they were making it tougher for the animals to eat, to find their food, because they felt that just giving them food was driving them crazy. They needed challenge.
Yeah.
And who gets free food and no work at all? Prisoners in jail. And we're not prisoners in jail. We need to do a little work, not because work is great, but because it gives us stimulation, a puzzle, something to work our brains on.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So what I'm hearing is another paradox that actually, when you're given food for free, that is indicative of slavery, because you're treated like a prisoner in jail, right? You don't have the freedom to go out and get your food yourself. You don't have we're not going to treat you like a capable human being or give you the means to provide for yourself. I'm gonna feed you like you're an animal at the zoo. I'm gonna feed you like you're a prisoner in a jail cell. So while they're remembering it as like, oh, remember when we were given our own food, we didn't have to just like collect this manna, but they would feed us regularly, or at least predictably, whatever it was, that actually, interestingly enough, they're misperceiving as a sign of freedom, but it actually is a sign of slavery. That's really interesting. It also deprives you of your humanity, right? To have that taken care of for you, even though it sounds great, it sort of defeats the humanity. Good. Let's dive into the Sifrei Bamidbar. Who wants to read? Any takers? Go for it.
We remember the fish that we would eat in Egypt free. Is it possible that the Egyptians gave them fish free? Is it not written, and now go and work, and straw will not be given you? If they did not give them straw free, would they give them fish free? How then are we to understand free? Free from mitzvot.
Right. So we understand the liberation from Egypt as a freedom from one master, but to another master, and that master being God. Right. So God frees us from human bondage and the cruel servitude and backbreaking labor and the degradation of slavery. But it's not a total freedom, right? It's not. And now go ahead. Like when you free the animals from the zoo and they stampede and they're in the woods now, they're free, right? This is you are my people and I'm choosing you and I love you and here are the laws that I'm entrusting to you, but I need you to follow these laws, right? So in one way, what the commentators reading into Chinam is that they're not actually complaining about the food, right? How true of life that when you complaining about one thing, there's a deeper, more existential issue behind that. And this was a rabbi from the conservative yeshiva in Israel and Jerusalem who first turned me on to this, saying it's not what the Israelites are eating, it's what's eating the Israelites. And what's eating them is they still have this slave mentality, right? It's you can take the Israelites out of Egypt, but you can't take Egypt out of the Israelites. That they don't want to inherit the mitzvot. They feel that is too much for them. So they're reminiscing on, remember when we didn't have the 613 commandments. Remember when we didn't have the responsibility. Remember when all we had to do was this physical labor, but we didn't have to toil in the realm of spiritual labor.
We didn't have to say the brachot.
We didn't have to say the brachot. Maybe that's what eating free is, right? Not having to think about where it comes from or to express gratitude to God. Yeah.
So I can imagine that Moshe didn't explain to the people before leaving Egypt about the mitzvot because he didn't know about that. But Moses, he went to the Pharaoh and said, it was a ploy, but we want to be able to serve our God, give us some time. So there's some understanding of serving of God, at least at his level, maybe not at the people. So I'm kind of thinking outside of, oh, good, we're getting out of Egypt. But were they sold any bill of goods or were they given any information about what you're getting into? Or simply you're getting out and we're going to run willy-nilly or we're going to go, to this land? I mean,
yeah.
So how surprised were they?
Right. How surprised and what kind of agency did they actually have, right? Did the Israelites know what they were getting themselves into, or was it, well, we just got to get out of this? So it's a great point. Moses knows, right? God reveals what's going to happen. Even our patriarchs know because God revealed it to them, saying, your ancestors will go down and they will be slaves, but I will remember them and I will deliver them. So there is this foreknowledge, and that's going to come up later too, that Moses.
Was there foreknowledge transmitted to the next generations?
So that's the question.
And if not, why would they stay cleaved to religion at all?
Right. And that's the thing, right? When we talk about Revelation and there's all the Midrashim about the Mount Sinai was raised above them and they were actually coerced into taking on the Ol Malchut Shemayim, right? And Ol Mitzvot, the yoke of the commandments. Were they coerced? Was it really a free decision, or was it God basically saying, accept it or die? It's a Midrash, right? It's not in the Torah. But there's two things. So the rabbis say, okay, at Sinai, we were coerced, but in the book of Esther, we take it upon ourselves freely because there's a verse in Megillat Esther where it says that they took it upon themselves. So there's sort of like this arc of, okay, maybe we weren't freely opting into the covenant at first, but then we did in Esther. So it's interesting that the rabbis want to correct that initial coercion and saying, but ultimately we did, and that's important to us that it was freely accepted at some point. Or you can look at it the other way, which is we said Na'aseh v'nishma. We did say we sign on. We did it at Sinai. We said we didn't even hear it yet. We're on. So maybe they didn't know, but there was this sense of either it's got to be better than what we have, or maybe like it's the Nachshonian leap of faith of we accept it even before we know it because we have seen the wonders of God in Egypt. And even though that memory is clearly short-term memory, right? Maybe we can give them the benefit of the doubt that they actually did feel, okay, well, I've seen God, I'm in. So now I want to get into, we started to bring up Revelation. So that's where we're going next. Go ahead, Ron, and then we'll.
I was just gonna say that the fourth one on the page, which we haven't gotten to yet.
So do you want to hold on to it or you want to say no?
Well, it goes to what we were saying, whether they knew or didn't know.
Good. So let's work our way to it. So who wants to read the third text from Shemot?
I will.
Okay, go for it, Lynn. Thanks.
The tablets were God's work. The writing was God's writing, incised upon the tablets.
Okay, just like there is a weird word in the first verse, chinam, there's a weird word in this verse, and it also means freedom. But in this case, it's being translated as engraved, which is the word charut. Because what Hebrew word does that sound like that means freedom?
They were.
Well, achrut is to engrave, right? But cherut is freedom. So there's sort of an interesting paradox here of how could the law, which is engraved in the tablets, ultimately mean freedom? Right, and this is what we've been discussing. How can law
Because you
mean
know
freedom?
what you have to do.
Right, so that goes right, yeah.
Then it's better, you can do what you want.
Good, so thanks for bringing back Hefker, because that's gonna get us back to why Bamidbar? Why the desert? Why nature? Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Right. So that goes back to our retirement conversation and how structure, whether it's externally imposed or self-imposed, does give you cherut, gives you freedom. Engraving something on your calendar, on your schedule, on your moral compass. However, there actually paradoxically is freedom in structure. And I always go back to this music metaphor that if you just sit on the piano and play and say, I'm free, it's going to sound pretty lousy. But if you accept upon yourself that music has theory and scales and key signatures, and you stay within a framework and say, I can choose whatever notes I want to choose, but they need to be from a limited selection of notes. Now I actually feel free because I'm following rules that are helping me attain freedom. So ultimately, I think that's sort of the cherut engraved law, but then freedom. But we have maybe a response.
Engraved is with the tet, not with the tough.
So I brought the BDB, the Brown Driver Driggs, sorry.
Easy for you to say.
Definition.
Say that 10 times.
Yeah, Brown Driver Driggs. And then I deleted it for space because I didn't want 3 pages. So this is punishment for having deleted it. So I shouldn't have deleted it.
Sorry.
I actually had you in mind, Ruth. I said, Ruth would really appreciate this, but I don't want to have to staple another page. So I'm gonna look up real quick, Sepharia, Exodus. I should actually just pull it up here. I'm gonna do it here.
Say it again, what's wrong here?
The wrong is that charut engraved is with the tet, and here it says with the tough.
So it's more freedom than.
No, that's pretty tough.
I'm gonna I'll share it here so you can see it as well. So you're along for the ride. Okay, so here we are. The charut, meaning, and they're translating it as engraved. And if we look at charut, so it says here, so engraved upon the tablets, and here they're doing it with a tav. But here's what's interesting, Ruth. They think, yeah, here's the BDB, the Brown Driver, yeah. Briggs, I said Driggs. Briggs, BDB, driver is the, yeah. But look, because they're noticing that this is not a word that appears elsewhere. There's something to mean that. So I think that's what you're getting at. It is strange here. And they say, I actually think it might be, and this is where it gets a little bit epicurus, where it's a little dicey, because they are saying it might be an error. Error for charush,
Which is what?
which means engraved, as in Jeremiah. We can look there and see how it's used charush to mean engraved. But if
In other words,
This
it's done orally. And so the shin and the top, they spoke Ashkenaz with part.
yes, but yes, that's I think as well, right? The shin and the taf being interchanged with Ashkenaz, we interchange those.
which means to get deeper into the thing.
Which is what you're doing, and you're engraving it in stone.
When you are plowing the earth, that's
Yes,
right.
right,
So
same,
that's you
right.
dig in deeper.
And I think that's a beautiful word choice, right? Because that ultimately, why opt into halakha? Why be Jewish? Ultimately, it is for that going deeper, and that there is freedom in a depth kind of way too, right? Like you're digging and uncovering more, and hopefully that's a meaning-making system that offers you a sense of freedom. But here it is, right? Shamir Charusha, right? With a stylus of iron engraved.
The Tziporen Shamir.
Yeah.
Tziporen Shamir.
Betziporen Shamir, yeah, sorry. Betziporen, thank you. Betziporen Shamir Charusha. Aluach Libam, right? And there you go, engraved on lufot, on tablets again. But this is being the tablet of your heart, which is what Rabbi Hal spoke about.
It is that too.
Okay, Jerry.
What are we to make of the fact that God engraved the tablet? Because when you read ahead, you know that the second set, Moses did the engraving, not God.
Yeah, well, this is one of my favorite things, but it's a different conversation about the human role and revelation and the partnership with God. So I have a whole other session about this one, but I love that the first one was shattered, was totally a product of God. Yeah, totally a product of God. The tablets were carved and it was engraved, the words by God, but that was shattered. In a sense, it was too perfect for this world. God wants a partnership with us in unfolding the tradition and interpreting and understanding law. So the second tablet, God has Moses carve the tablets and then God inscribes on it. So the second set, which is a partnership between humanity and the divine, that's the enduring tablets that remain. Okay, so this was an interesting sidebar. So thank you for being, I hope that helps a little.
Remains is the imperfect one.
Yes, and again, with the paradoxes, the imperfect is somehow more perfect. Because the problem with the perfect tablets is that we're a passive recipient. But with the imperfect tablets, we had a role in it. And in that way, it's more elevating of our role. We're more active. So there's almost more perfection in the imperfection.
We have to work for our food.
Work for our food. There we go. To bring it full circle.
But Moshe was the only one that had to work.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It would have been chaotic. By committee, it would have been hard. But okay. Let's keep going. So the oddity of that word, harut, and not being anywhere else, and also should be with a tet. That's what's making the rabbis say, well, don't read it as engraved, read it as cherut, read it as freedom.
No, I understood that, but
Yeah. No, thank you. Okay. So now I want to go to the next Midrash. This is from Midrash Tehillim of Psalms, which now we're getting into the nature of freedom. What does freedom mean? And how did, in this case, the Israelites achieve their freedom? Obviously, it's from God, but this Midrash is going to sort of speak to the nature of freedom a bit more and how we arrived there. So who wants to read?
I'll read.
Go for it. Thanks.
Children of Israel were redeemed from Egypt because of 4 meritorious acts. They did not change their names. They did not change their language. They did not reveal their secrets. And they did not abandon circumcision.
So a couple things about this. There's only 3 listed in the Midrash Tehillim, but the 4th is an addition from a different Midrashic source, Tana de Be'eliyahu. But here again, it's so.
Which one?
What do you mean?
Which one did he add?
Oh, circumcision. Okay. And so let's unpack this a little bit. First of all, freedom. So the Israelites were redeemed from Egypt. for 4 reasons, 4 meritorious acts. And what's interesting is those 4 things are sort of not what you would think goes with freedom. It's again, it's things that are more accepting the yoke of law upon themselves, or a structure or rules that is somehow leading to their experience of freedom.
Well, they're also not acts, they're all not doing things.
Oh, or maybe acts that are not acts, right? But in some ways, an omission is also an act, right? Not saying something is sometimes saying something. Or,
But it's also, they
inaction.
it's a negative thing also.
How
They
so?
didn't change it because they were too lazy.
Okay.
They didn't have, they were so glad they were out
Yeah.
that they weren't even thinking.
Interesting. So being in a conservative institution, I like that we're getting both sides of this argument of not making changes. Is that lazy? Or is not making changes beautiful because you're clinging to tradition and protecting it? So it's interesting. Go ahead,
It
Nina.
can also be protected.
Exactly. But I want to get to that. But Nina, go ahead.
Well, upon reading that sentence, the first thing that came to my thought was, we kept our identity, right? To me, not, changing your name, your language, things like that.
Exactly
I
right.
think, wasn't it dress also? We didn't change the dress.
That's what I heard.
Right. And that is interesting because you might do that, right? If you are if you're starting a new chapter, if you want to separate yourself from your past of being a slave, there's a freedom in saying, like I'm going by a new name, right? I'm going by a new language. I'm going by a new, but they don't do that. They are clinging to their identity. Oh, we have a lot of hands now, but let's go Larry, and then we'll work our way around. And then I want to unpack this a little
I
bit.
mean, we were known as Hebrews, right, back then?
Yeah.
Interesting, in 48, with Israel, reading a book about Ben Gurion, one of the 2 things, in 48, on Crete with Israel, one of the 2 things that Ben Gurion and some of the others stressed, they all changed their names, pretty much.
Yeah.
And Hebrew came to be.
Right.
Eliezer, he said, and Ben Gurion took that upon also, saying, without going back to the language, we're just not there. So those are 2 very defining cultural acts.
Yeah, I mean, the Eliezer ben Yehuda made his son only speak in Hebrew, and it really ostracized him. And it was, but look at the results. I mean, in languages, because how we are a tradition of language. What is the first act in Torah? God creates the world through language. So there is so much significance put on language, and there's a mystical element to it as well, right? Specifically of the Hebrew language, which is Lashon HaKodesh, right? So, okay, there were a lot of hands. So can we work our way this way? Is that all right? So, okay, let's start here and just go, and then we're gonna, and I do want to get to the rest of the text. But
I don't know if there's another version of this or not. I've always heard this is in the positive rather than the negative. They kept their names, they kept their language, they kept their clothing.
Yeah.
And they continued circumcision. That one I have doubts about because they didn't do it in the desert.
Right.
So I have doubts that they did it in Egypt.
Yes, but certainly, I think this is counting as but you're saying Joshua doing the second one doesn't count because it's.
Oh, and the other
before redemption, it's what earned redemption.
And going back to what I said before about whether they knew or didn't know, they knew that they were supposed to take Joseph's bones with them.
Right.
So at least somebody knew.
Right. What was this foreknowledge? What was how strong were their roots? But this not revealing their secrets bit.
I don't know what that one is.
Yeah. So God tells Moses what's going to happen, that you're going to despoil the Egyptians and, that there will, but if they had played if they had spilled the beans, it would have subverted the Exodus. So by keeping their secrets, it's the rabbis are, if you continue with this Midrash, they're saying what that means is that they knew that freedom was coming, and they had to keep quiet about it, or else it could have been counter.
Is there a positive version of this, or I just remember?
I think it.
Yeah, right.
I think the shot of this is positive. It's saying that they were redeemed for 4 meritorious acts. Like these are good things that they did.
Yeah, but I'm saying they actually did them, not that they did not do. That they kept.
It's not.
That it was stated the other way. They kept their names, they kept their clothes, they kept their.
Is it stated in the positive?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'd have to look. I don't know. Yeah, let's keep going. Other hands? Okay, we addressed some, good, Bob?
To change their names, was that while they were slaves or after they left slavery to freedom? Was that when they kept their names the same?
So I actually think that it's a great question, and I'm not 100% positive, but what I think it is, it's actually keeping their ancestral names, because the only Egyptian names are the Levites. Moses, so Moshe and Miriam and Aharon. There is scholarship, Richard Friedman, who says that the Levites are the only ones who have Egyptian names. But the other Israelites, presumably, I mean, those are Hebrew names. So I actually think it's not assimilating to the Egyptian culture, which we have a lot of laws about not doing. Don't shave the corner of your beard. Don't emulate the practices of the Egyptians, right? So yes, I think it's actually, apart from the Levites who have Egyptian names, but Moshe was raised in the palace. But yeah, so I think it's actually keeping your Hebrew identity even in slavery. And that's what earned them redemption.
What was the alternative? What were they gonna change their names from? They left,
Yeah.
they left Egypt. So what were they gonna change it to? They really did not.
No, while they were in Egypt, I think what it's referring to is that they didn't assume a like slave name while in Egypt. You know, like you're not going to be Naphtali, you're going to be an insert Egyptian name, right?
They
Or something.
didn't assimilate.
Right. I think that's what it's getting at. Yes.
They have a
Rachel.
choice.
Yeah. Well, I think there would have been pressure to, unless you say that, no, they're
Area.
right. And Goshen, thank you, Goshen. I was going to say Gershom because I'm thinking of Moses' son, the Egyptian name. But that's actually Hebrew because Gershom, and that goes about assimilation, right? Being a Gershom. But right, and they were kept in Goshen, and they were abominable to the Egyptians because of their being cattle herders and shepherds, right? So yeah, in some ways, I think that's a good point, that the Egyptians actually would not have wanted them to. It would have been an insult to Egyptians for them to take on Egyptian culture, which is so superior, right? Yeah.
But they. Yeah.
Right.
Civilization to no one.
Yes.
There's
Pressure is not there. And we're gonna get to the importance of the midbar of nature, going back to our points from the beginning really soon. Rachel, go ahead.
So you said something about they added one, there were three. They added one. I'm wondering if the three. That they didn't change their names, they did not change their language, they didn't reveal their secrets. Those are talking. We're not talking, and circumcision is doing. So.
Really interesting.
And maybe.
Oh,
I
and
don't
their
know if
clothes.
this week, but is it kind of like not 7 each month?
I was thinking maybe you'd go there, yeah.
I don't know. Hearing and talking.
I like that a lot. I didn't read that in there, and I really like that. I'm seeing it now that you're saying it, and I think that's really cool. The not abandoning circumcision is also quoting, by your blood you shall live, by your blood you shall. So it's saying, oh, well, that therefore they were redeemed because of this act of, and again, engraving, right, the covenant in their flesh. There's Harush again in a different way, or yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this question. What about those Jews who stayed behind? They did not go to the desert. What happened to
Can you
them?
talk louder? We can.
Interesting. What happened to the Jews who stayed behind, who did not leave?
Who did not leave? I mean, did they lose their identity or,
They lost their life.
They lost, I know they lost their life, but,
Right, what ultimately became of them? It's a great question, and I
they
don't
might have
know.
assimilated into the Egyptian culture completely like we see today.
Right. I really don't know. I will say most of the focus is on the opposite. It's on the Erev Rab. It's the mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, right? The Egyptians who joined the Israelites. But is there any attention or paid to Israelites who may have stayed behind? I actually don't know. It's clear that Moses is saying we're taking everybody, right? That's when Pharaoh said, okay, you can go, but leave the children, no, we need everybody. So I'm not sure. No attention is really paid to those, but it may be somewhere and I need to research it. I don't know. It's a good question. Yes, sure.
Along with what Sheila was saying, when you're a slave, you don't have freedom of choice in everything. In other words, the Egyptians could have prohibited circumcision. We know that they could kill all the baby boys.
Right.
So they certainly could prohibit it. So there's a certain meaning to the fact that the Egyptians didn't outlaw some of these things that the Jews continued because they could have.
Very interesting point. Right. I'd have to play with that a little bit more, but I think that's great. So I want to, just for time, I want us to get to the
Can I
last
say a word
couple.
in here?
Oh, no, you did have me move that. Yes, you can. Go ahead.
These four things are what half the Jews did because of the Greeks, including abandoning circumcision. They actually tried to put a foreskin back on their penis so they could look Greek in the gymnasium. So
Right.
this is maybe not about the Egyptians as much as about the civil war in Israel before this time.
Good, thanks for bringing the context. I know that the Shifrins would really appreciate that point. I feel like that's what they would say, saying that, well, what's the time that it's being written and what's the motivation for it's being written? And maybe it's saying, look, taking a look around at Jews in diaspora and exile and facing the pressure of assimilation and saying, look, we were redeemed because we avoided, we didn't give in to the pressure to assimilate. We need that now, facing Greek pressure. So thank you. Okay, I want us to get to the last couple. This again, we're now moving on to different aspects of freedom. We just talked about the freedom of sort of leaning into the things that define you, the structures, the boundaries, the laws that are identity forming. Here is another aspect of freedom as being not, so on one hand, it's embracing boundaries. And on another hand, it is totally dissolving boundaries, even those that seem impossible to dissolve. That somehow freedom is more powerful. It's self-surpassing, to quote Rabbi Artson, who taught me this one. Who would like to read this one?
I'll read it.
Go ahead.
Rabbi Yosef HaGalili taught, at the time that the Jewish people ascended from the sea, they resolved to sing a song of gratitude to God. And how did they recite this song? If a baby was lying on his mother's lap or an infant was nursing from his mother's breast, once they saw the divine presence, the baby straightened their neck and the infant dropped the breast from their mouth. And they recited, this is my God and I will glorify God.
Okay, so I can appreciate a lot of the things here about that. Straightening their neck, right? That is a barrier that's being broken. Speech, right? This is like, and not being food motivated. Those are all breaking the developmental boundaries that are like freedom, breaking forth of actually doing the impossible. Okay, keep going. That is, as it is stated, out of the mouths.
As it is stated, out of the mouths of babies and sucklings, you have founded strength. Rabbi Meir would say, from where is it derived that even fetuses in their mother's womb recited the song at the sea? And it is stated in full assemblies, bless God, the Lord, you that are from the source of Israel.
And that's the word that their proof text is hinging on, source. That the womb, the rechem is the makor, is the source. Keep going.
Oh, blessed God when they gathered at the sea. The Gemara asks, but the fetuses could not see. So how could they have honestly said, this is my God and I will glorify God?
Which implies sight and acknowledgement, okay?
Rabbi Nachum said, their mother's stomach was transformed for them like luminous crystal and they saw through it.
So, but it's so out there, but isn't that such beautiful midrashic poetry about the nature of freedom, right? And I think going back to July 4th too, it's like, and going to the Exodus, going to our liberation story, right? And remember that Benjamin Franklin wanted the turkey, right? But also wanted the Red Sea splitting, and I think the quote something like so too with all tyrants, or you know, that kind of the linking of July 4th with our exodus from Egypt, but freedom being miraculous, right? Freedom being against all odds, freedom being a shirking of boundaries that in this case, even physical boundaries that are impossible to shed. But you have to have that kind of miraculous faith in the power of freedom if you are bold enough to try to encounter it.
So this goes against, of course, seeing the miracle in the drop of rain and the miracle in the ordain in the simple. No, this is saying, no, the miracles are impossible.
Good, it's all about balance. So let's finish with that.
Okay.
That sentiment, right? So yes, there's that nature, there's that element of freedom, and then there's the other element of freedom, which is not just like the external great miracles, the Hallel worthy, right? Because that's not, you can't sustain life or Judaism on the big natural law shattering miracles, but with the miracles that exist and permeate within and through nature. So this final text is from Rav Nachman of Breslov, the Breslaver, his disciple, who was really the one who disseminated his teachings. This is so a Hasidic Rabbi, mystical tradition. Let's read this about Hitbodedut. Hitbodedut is the act of going out alone into nature and praying with a deeper sense of kavanah, of intention and spirituality that you can only achieve alone in nature. The Israelites are freed from, and it's interesting that they're thinking of vegetables, right? These natural things that they miss as opposed to manna from heaven, which is supernatural, right? They miss the natural. But again, it's this like God has brought them to the desert. And in some cases, it's you think of a dry, arid wasteland, but Midbar is not really so much, it is a thirsty desert, yes, but more so it is hefker, it's ownerless. It is a wilderness, right? Wilderness is sort of more accurate than desert. And one of the comment the rabbis say that Torah was given in a place that was hefker because Torah itself, while Jews have a sacred task of and responsibility of carrying it and trusting it, but it is for everyone, right? God's Torah is for everyone. It's in that sense, it's ownerless. It's a gift given and entrusted to us, but it's meant to be for everyone. So let's read about Hitbodedut and the beauty of prayer in nature. Who'd like to read? How about Nina, actually, or Larry, but I was going to say, because this is what you would be doing today.
No, I love it. Oh, we will be.
Oh, good, you're going to do
Oh,
it.
yeah, we're leaving right after class.
So why don't you guys read it, one of you, both of you together, whatever you like.
Okay, well, I have to sing. I have to read song of songs.
Okay, that's what it's coming off of, so go ahead.
Come, my beloved.
Nice.
Let us go out to the field. Let us stay overnight in the villages. Let us arise to the vineyards. Let us see if the grapevine has flowered, if the tiny grapes have developed, if the pomegranates have lost their flowers. There I will give you my love. Oh. And in public.
Master of the world, help me always engage in the great deal of Hitbodedut. May I accustom myself to go out every day to the fields, among the trees, grasses, and all the vegetation of the field. There, may I engage in Hitbodedut in the great deal of conversation, as prayer, being myself and you my maker, expressing everything that is in my heart. May all of the vegetation of the field, all of the grasses, trees, and plants be aroused to greet me, rise up, and invest their strength and vitality in my words of conversation and prayer. Then may my prayer and conversation reach the ultimate perfection with the aid of all the plants of the field, so that all of them, with all their might, vitality, and spirit, reaching up to the supernal root, will be incorporated into my prayer. As a result, may I open my heart and engage in a great deal of prayer, pleading, and holy conversation before you, who are filled with vast compassion. May I pour forth all of my conversation before you. At last, may I pour my heart out like water before your countenance, Hashem. I lift my hands to you on behalf of my soul and the souls of my children.
So there's something really interesting about, and we're going to end now because I know we're at time, but Hitbodedut, the root there is loneliness, right? Badad, alone, quarantine, right? It was the same, right? You're right. But what's so interesting about this text is how not alone the speaker is, because who's the minion, right? If you have to daven with a minion, but you're alone in the wilderness, who's your minion? Good God.
And the
Trees.
trees.
The trees, the grasses, the birds, and he's describing how they are all giving their song. They are praying, they're helping elevate his song to God. And in turn, there's this beautiful symbiosis because he says, let my soul be poured out to you like water. So it's almost like the plants are aiding his prayer and he is aiding, or she is aiding the natural world around her with prayer as well. So in this season of freedom, as we get ready for 4th of July, I want to wish everyone multiple entry points into the experience of freedom, whether that's structure, self-imposed, or given to us by God in our tradition, or whether that is the freedom that only being out in the natural world can inspire. I hope everyone feels uplifted. And the segue to now, we're going on a brief chofesh, a brief vacation from this class. It's sad for me. Freedom is, I hope, in a week I'll say I had it better back when.
Freedom for you, set for me.
Yeah, no. No, I don't want to be free from this class either, but we'll take a brief break and see you in August 15th. And I just, again, want to thank everybody. This has been such a beautiful project that started out as I was, as a new rabbi, supposed to start a class that was like 5 sessions just to get like no, it's very mutual. I love this, and it's what I look forward to every week is learning together and receiving the Torah that's engraved on the tablets on all of your hearts. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you again August.
Thank you.